Hello and welcome to Senior Solutions, where we bring you topics affecting seniors and their families. I'm your host, Mindy Felinton. Have you ever thought about what changes our bodies go through as they age and our nutritional needs change as well, and dietary changes that impact us as we age? Well, I have, and my guest today is Marietta Amatangelo, and that's a mouthful, which is kind of appropriate. She's a registered dietitian and a holistic nutritionist, and she's here today to talk about those very things. Thank you for being here today,
Thank you
Marietta.
for having me. Thank you.
And thank you for coming on short notice and kind of rushing out from helping people to be here today. It was really
My pleasure.
great of you to do that.
My pleasure.
So I'd like to just get a little bit of history about how you became interested in this and how your focus on nutrition and diet evolved.
Okay. Way back when I was in college, I originally entered a program at the University of Pittsburgh. They were doing a psychological study on behavioral aspects of nutrition and dieting. And when I was participating in that study, it just became fascinating to me, and I started reading more about macronutrients and how they work in your body.
What are they? What are macronutrients?
Macronutrients are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, the big ones that everybody knows about.
What else is there? I thought
There's the micronutrients.
Okay.
So anyway, I decided to go and study nutrition, and I did what I call conventional medicine nutrition as a dietitian in a hospital and nursing homes until 1995. And then 1995, I was diagnosed with leukemia. And at that time, they gave me 2 years to live. And I decided I wasn't going to leave the planet because I had a 5-year-old daughter. So I went on a number of experimental drugs. And while doing that, I did tons of research on my own on vegetarian diet and herbs and immune improving nutrients, things like that. And 4 years forward to 2000, I decided that I did not want to be a conventional dietitian anymore, and that I wanted to do it differently, and that's what led me into a more holistic type of practice.
And how does that differ, the holistic, from the traditional?
I think a way to answer that is that you will see traditional dietitians in hospitals, nursing homes, and other institution-type settings. Mm-hmm. And there are other dietitians out there in working for grocery manufacturers and things like that as well. But the ones that I'm referring to more work in an institutional setting, and they deal with diets, specific diets, and how to tell someone to eat for a specific diet, like a low cholesterol diet or a heart healthy diet, or somebody with low sodium, or somebody with diabetes, things like that. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty much limited to that area, and they definitely do address other lifestyle issues. When I work with someone, I take a very much whole person approach. So I don't just look at what you put in your mouth. I mean, that is a piece of it. I look at other habits. What are your sleep habits? What are your what's happening with stress in your life? What are your spiritual habits? And when I work with someone, each diet that I put together for them, each food program is tailor-made for that person. And then depending on what the issues are, health issues that they're dealing with, there's usually a supplement and or an herbal program that goes along with it. And those are the kinds of things that conventional dietitians typically do not deal with.
So it was your own journey, and how many years later are we
18
from your
years.
Diagnosis? So
18-year survivor.
I guess it's working.
Yes, it's working. It's working well. I say that God left me here for a reason. That was to work with other people.
Yes, it seems. So what are the changes that people go through as they're aging that need to be addressed nutritionally? Well,
I can speak for myself and for others as well. there's some big changes that happen. A lot of them are in the digestive system. We tend to produce less acid, so that some of the nutrients that need an acid environment we don't absorb as well. One of them is B12. Vitamin D is an issue. Well, it's an issue across the country. But with the senior population, our skin changes in that we do not turn vitamin D into actual vitamin D that we can use. We can't turn the sun into vitamin D at as great a rate as, say, a 20-year-old.
So, why is that?
To give you the scientific reason, I can't.
Okay.
I can't explain that. But 70% of seniors are vitamin D deficient right now. And across the country, it's about an 85% rate for a population.
Wow.
And other changes are we tend to...
Look, may I interrupt
Sure,
you?
absolutely.
No, Mindy, you can't. The ramifications of being vitamin D deficient are what?
Mm-hmm. Well, vitamin D has been implicated with a lot of chronic conditions and serious illnesses. They've found relationships with vitamin D in cancer, vitamin D in depression, vitamin D in diabetes. Those are the three that are off the top of my head. Fibromyalgia is another one. MS is another one. It's so involved in health, way more than we ever thought it was. And it's a vitamin, but it's actually a hormone. So that it has greater implications than, say, vitamin C, if you will. So it's really, really important for everybody to get their vitamin D level checked. And I believe that strongly for both children and adults. And children that I've worked with, probably the lowest level I've seen is 9 nanograms. And for adult, the lowest I've ever seen is 4.
And the normal range for each?
As their range that they're in.
Okay.
When you get below 30, that's considered moving into osteomalacia. And osteomalacia means your bones are softening. And as we get older, going back to one of the changes, is that our bones become more susceptible to fractures when we fall. And so you definitely want to have a healthy vitamin D level so that you can absorb the calcium to keep those bones strong.
So it's important to really get those levels checked.
Absolutely, yeah. And, once you get them checked by your physician, the two of you can work together as far as what level of vitamin D that you should be on, and it should be tracked. And I tell everyone they should have their vitamin D checked at least every year.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, at least every year.
And is there any reversal once someone does start to take the appropriate amount of vitamin D or have those levels that are what's appropriate for them?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Our bodies kind of have a reserve tank, if you will. And on a daily basis, our body uses anywhere from about 2,000 to 3,000 international units of vitamin D. So we have a reserve tank. And if it gets below a certain level, everything from the sun or what you eat, your body uses constantly, and that reserve tank can't be filled because you're using it up if you're not taking sufficient amounts. So when you take vitamin D to bring your level up, your tank has to be filled first. And then once the tank gets filled, then you see the levels in the blood go up.
I see. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, what are your thoughts about using vitamin D supplements versus nutritional? And what are the
From
nutritional
food.
ways that we can, from food that we can build up that reserve and keep our levels up?
There's not a whole lot of foods that have vitamin D in them naturally.
Oh, darn. I was hoping it was chocolate or something.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I'd have a really high level. I believe in dark chocolate. Very good for you. But anyway, sockeye salmon has vitamin D in it. Canned tuna has vitamin D in it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So just to stop you there with the canned tuna, the mercury,
Right.
the D,
Exactly. So it's
Pick your
really,
poison?
it's not a good trade-off. But I'm just giving you foods that do have it. There's also, orange juice has some, and eggs have some. But you're not going to get enough vitamin D from those foods if you're low to bring it up to where it needs to be. And sun, on the other hand, 30 minutes of sun at the right time of the day, at the right time of the year, will give you about 5,000 IUs. And so an hour will be 10,000 IUs. And that's why you see people south of the equator, like in Brazil, for example, you don't see many deficient vitamin D people down there.
Mm-hmm. But do you see skin cancer?
I don't know. That's a good question.
It's like, okay, the pro of this, the con.
Right, exactly. You have to weigh everything.
Right,
You have to weigh everything.
Yes, it's management of all that.
Right.
So the changes that we see happening to people as they age, nutritionally, what can people do to address those changes?
One of the things you have to become really conscious of is the choices that you make as you get older become even more important because of the change in lean body mass versus body fat. We don't have as much lean tissue to burn calorie. Only lean tissue burns calories. Fat doesn't. So as the fat increases and the muscle tissue goes down, we have less surface area to burn calories. So we need about 20 to 25% less calories than we did, say, when we were in our 20s. Ugh. I know, depressing, isn't it?
I thought I wanted you on the show. Yeah.
There will be good news, though, too.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll get to that.
Okay. But anyway, the food that you eat has to become hand-picked, nutrient-dense food. Empty calories will not work. In other words, when you want to sit down for lunch and have a good salad, you want to make sure that there's tomatoes in it or sliced beets in it or really foods that hold a lot of nutrition, a lot of nutrients, not just calories. Mm-hmm. So we have to be constantly thinking a little more about what we put in our mouth.
Well, how does someone really know, and what resources are available to get a better handle on what things are nutrient rich? Like, I might think something is, and I find out it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I see a lot of people who come to me, and the reason they come to me for a session is they're happy where they are. They feel good. They don't have many health issues. So they want to basically do a check. What does my diet look like? How can I improve it? Or what supplements should I be taking? Or are the supplements I'm taking the right ones? Mm-hmm. So there's that. And then there's apps that you can use for your phone. A really good app that can give you an idea of how many calories, how much protein, fiber, and some of the nutrients is FitnessPal. And it's also, if you're trying to lose weight, it's a great way to track your calories. And then there's a website called nutritiondata.com. That's a great place to put your food in and just have it spit out what your nutrition is for that day.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah,
well, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, I'd also like to see if there are any other suggestions for those of us or the seniors or their families who are watching the show who may not have access to those apps.
Okay.
Because we know not all of them do. So maybe you'll be able to share some other suggestions, maybe some books or something.
Sure.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Now it's time for This Week in Bad Stats.
Bad stats?
Horrible stats. Here goes. 260.
That's how many runs were walked in with the bases loaded last season.
Wow, very good. Here's a tough one, though. 3 and 4.
No idea.
That's the number of kids who witness bullying. 3 out of 4.
Not a good stat.
No, it's not, but that can change. Kids want to help, but they don't know how. You can visit stopbullying.gov and give them the tools they need to help prevent bullying.
There are plenty of safe ways kids can help at stopbullying.gov.
Welcome back to Senior Solutions, where we bring you topics affecting seniors and their families. I'm your host, Mindy Felinton, and my guest today is Marietta Amatangelo. I got it right.
You did? Very good.
And she is a registered dietitian, and we've been talking about seniors and nutritional and dietary changes and and suggestions about how to deal with those. Thank you very much again for being here.
My pleasure.
When we left off, we were just trying to come up with some suggestions for people who may not have access to apps and the internet for what they might want to do to get more information about nutritional values and nutrition information. What suggestions do you have, Marietta?
There are so many books, and it's a matter of how far do you want to delve in. Do you want something very light? Do you want a recipe book to help you out? Or you need something, you really enjoy the science and you want to go deeply. So I think that I'm more than willing to have people email me at my website. And if they want specific suggestions for what their need is, I'd be happy to give them suggestions on books.
Okay.
Or if they do, well, they have to have the web, I guess, to do that. And if they don't, they can give me a call.
At the library, they would have a lot of opportunities for people to get
absolutely.
information at the library.
And you can probably even get DVDs there to watch.
Great. And you were also talking earlier about the vitamin D levels and kind of the ranges. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more about that? Because I know that is so critical. And a little bit about how the ranges work and the variations.
Sure, I'd be happy to. With vitamin D, the way the labs structure their ranges right now, anything below 30 is considered deficient. And there's a lot of controversy around vitamin D right now as far as what should your level be, what's an appropriate level, what's an optimum level, and how much exactly should you take on a daily basis. And keeping in mind what I said earlier, that your body uses about 2,000 to 3,000 IUs a day, if you're deficient, say you're at 15 nanograms, and you take 3,000 IUs or 2,000 IUs of vitamin D, your body's just going to use that. It's not going to have anything to fill the tank up. What I like to tell my patients or my clients is that I like to see a range between 50 and 60. And if someone has a health issue, like say, for example, cancer, I like it to be a little higher. Right now there are organizations, expert organizations in the country that actually can't agree on how much vitamin D you should take a day. The Institute of Medicine says that we need about 800 IUs a day, and children need, I think it's around 600. And then the Endocrine Society says that adults should take around 2,000 and children a little less.
2,000 IUs a day.
2,000 IUs a day. So what I've seen with physicians who are more integrative and holistic, they tend to, when someone is below 30, they tend to give a patient 50,000 IUs for 3 months. And then at 3 months checked to see where they are, and that helps you figure out how much should you take at that point. So if you are taking a high dose, you definitely want to be monitored closer than every year.
And thank you for that. That was really helpful. I know what I'm doing when I get home. I'm popping vitamin D pills. Are there other nutritional or deficiencies that seniors commonly have? What would those be?
Well, one of them is B12. I mentioned that earlier. Another one is B6, and B6 has a lot to do with red blood cells, and there are a lot of medications that actually deplete B6. And
For example, what would those be?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of a med, but there are a lot of meds deplete an assortment of nutrients. And one of the things that I do when I work with someone is to look at the meds that they're on and look at nutrient interactions to see if there's any kind of depletion for them. And one of the things that I do too for my clients is there's a functional test that I use where they can actually look inside the cell and tell you what levels of specific nutrients you have, and if you're deficient in some, or you're adequate, or above, you're at optimum. And it's an excellent test. It tells you a lot of information. So especially people who are on multiple meds, I like to do that test for. Another...
I'm going to interrupt again.
Okay.
Even though my mother taught me never to do that. I lost my train of thought. Oh, what's entailed in that test? How is that
It's a
performed?
simple blood draw.
And would insurance cover that? Probably not.
No, actually, insurance does cover it.
Really?
Right. This is one of the tests that I do that insurance covers, and it's a quite expensive test, so it's really great that insurance does cover it, and you get a lot of information from it.
That's good to know.
Very helpful.
So why wouldn't more people do it? I wonder.
Probably because more people don't know about it. Mm-hmm. This is one of the things that I do as an integrative functional medicine. When you were asking me earlier on, nutritionists, that typically conventional dietitians don't do.
Okay, good. So going back to what you were going to say about the other deficiencies.
Another nutrient that we seniors tend to be low in is calcium. And one of the reasons is, as we get older, a lot of people become lactose intolerant, so that they aren't eating dairy and they aren't taking in the calcium. Magnesium is another one that we tend to be low in. There's actually a study done. It's not a study. It's actually NHANES, which is part of the USDA. It's a survey that they do on a yearly basis and look at what nutrients the population is deficient in. And selenium is another one that we have a tendency to be deficient in. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole list of them, and that's why I say that, and there's even some research on it, a lot of research on it, that for insurance, you really want to take a quality multivitamin and mineral. Right now, it's a controversy again, just like vitamin D, because there's been some literature that's come out recently saying that taking multivitamins will shorten your life, or if you have this illness, you'll be, it'll kill you. And the studies that were done specifically on the multivitamins and minerals, if you read them in the entirety, there's flaws in the study, and there's a plethora of studies and facts that show that multivitamins and minerals actually can prolong life and help with specific kinds of illnesses.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're preaching to the choir for me. I'm
Good.
A huge proponent. Oh, yeah.
That's good.
Yes.
You should see. I was going to say, you should see my cupboard at home, but then you don't want to see it because I have a Lazy Susan full of supplements.
Yes. Well, we should certainly share that.
Speak the same language.
Yes, most definitely. When you've done this test and determined that, in fact, there's been an effect from medications that someone's taking, then does that have to be approved through their doctor about how to balance the needs of the medical aspects versus the nutritional? How do you deal with that whole integration?
Good question. Very good question. It actually depends on the nutrient, and I'm just going to pull one out, and that's omega-3 fatty acid. We're very deficient in the level of omega-3 fatty acids that we get in our diet, and the test shows for that. If somebody comes out very low in the test, I have to look at the meds, because if somebody's on Coumadin, one of the things that omega-3 fatty acids do is thins the blood. So, and CoQ10 is another one that thins the blood. So that those have to be looked at by a physician when you're working with the patient. You have to collaborate on the two. And that's happened with a number of patients that I've worked with who've been on Coumadin. And it works out very nicely. They just adjust the dose. Mm-hmm. Other nutrients, though, let's say, for example, they showed up very low in magnesium. I would just recommend a magnesium supplement. And it also depends on where they are in the graph, whether they need that specific multivitamin, that specific nutrient, or if just a quality multivitamin and mineral will do the trick.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you're looking for the quality supplements, what are some of the things that people should look for?
You don't want to have a multivitamin and mineral that has a hard shell. Hard shells are very difficult to break down in your body. And the less expensive ones, the less expensive multivitamins and minerals tend to use cheaper end products, cheaper nutrients. In other words, your body has to go through a lot more to break it down before it's actually usable. So gel caps are great. There's lots of vegetarian gel caps out there that multivitamins and minerals come in. A powder is great, and liquid is great too. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So those are very helpful. What about, not getting into brand names, but processing of the different, like for example, some supplements that I take are through an herbal processing company. Anything in particular with regard to herbs that we should be looking at?
As far as herbs go, if you really want to try and avoid herbs from China,
Why is that?
There's a lot of toxic materials that come through the herbs from China. If an herb is marked organic, you can think it's a little safer. However, we don't control what organic means in China, so you can't really count on it. As far as herbs go, you really want to work with someone who knows herbs, knows the manufacturers, or an acupuncturist who deals with herbs, or a chiropractor who deals with herbs, or a physician, or a nutritionist like myself. They're going to know the quality companies to deal with.
And do the seniors have any other things that you would recommend that they look at taking, like probiotics?
Great question. Probiotics, from the research that I've read recently for seniors, is essential. One of the things that happens as we age is that the balance of our gut kind of goes more in the favor of not so good bacteria as we age. The healthy bacteria in our gut isn't as powerful, if you will. We don't have as much. So, in knowing that 70% of the immune system is around your intestinal tract, you want to keep that in as good shape as it possibly can be. So definitely a good probiotic, not just acidophilus. Everybody knows what acidophilus is. You want a probiotic that has multiple strains in it, because we know of right now 400 species in our gut, but there's way more. And out of those 400 species, excuse me, I think there's only research done on like around 22 of them. All right. So we don't know a whole lot about probiotics, and the research right now is vast with probiotics. And if I were to say two other things that I would recommend is, one, to get maybe some additional protein. As we get older, our body doesn't use protein as efficiently as we did when we were younger, and every cell in our body needs protein to replicate. And the other thing that I would suggest is consider a digestive enzyme, just because our pancreas, as we get older, is not as efficient at putting out digestive enzymes. And also, we don't have as much acid, and acid is what actually signals the pancreas to put out digestive enzymes when your stomach has food in it.
Okay. Very, very informative. Thank you. Thank you very much for that helpful information. And if someone wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that, Marietta?
I have a website, and it's 2Nourish, and that's the number 2nourish.com. And they can also reach me via email at info@2nourish.com. And do you want my phone number?
Sure. Some people, that's the best way.
My business phone number is 877-428-0555.
Well, thank you again for being here today. And if you have any ideas for a topic you'd like to see on Senior Solutions, please feel free to contact me at seniorsolutionsTV@gmail.com. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.